This holiday, The Night answers back. Silent Night, Deadly Night, the 2025 reboot directed by Mike P. Nelson, takes a familiar slasher setup and sharpens it into a chilling exploration of trauma and violence wrapped in Christmas iconography. Nelson, known for his tense atmospheric approach in genre films, teams up with writers Paul Kamey and Michael Hickey to deliver a horror thriller that's as much about psychological torment as it is about blood-soaked spectacle. With a cast led by Rohan Campbell and Ruby Modine, this film stakes its claim in the crowded field of holiday horror by blending relentless brutality with a story that wants us to engage with its dark emotional core. Today on Cut to Reel, we're breaking down how Silent Night, Deadly Night crafts its scares, tension, and thematic weight, and why it stands out in a sea of slasher remakes and holiday killers. The premise is straightforward but effective. After witnessing his parents' brutal murder on Christmas Eve, Billy becomes a killer Santa who unleashes yearly sprees of calculated violence. This year, however, his deadly routine collides with a young woman who challenges him to confront his darkness. The film sits firmly in the horror thriller genre, mixing slasher elements with psychological drama. Released in 2025, it arrives in a climate where genre films increasingly blur lines between visceral horror and character-driven narratives. Unlike many one-note slashers, this version aims to deepen the mythos around its killer, exploring the emotional fallout that drives the violence. Whether it hit theaters or streamed primarily, details suggest a hybrid release strategy. It joins a trend of horror films that try to do more than just shock, instead inviting viewers into the fractured mind of their antagonist. Mike P. Nelson's direction here is precise and calculated, employing a visual style that balances stark realism with moments of almost surreal dread. Known for his work on tense thrillers and horror projects, Nelson favors atmospheric framing and purposeful camera movement. The composition often traps characters in claustrophobic settings, reinforcing the feeling of inescapable menace. The color palette leans heavily on cold winter tones contrasted with the traditional reds and greens of Christmas, heightening the unsettling clash between festive imagery and brutal violence. Editing rhythm varies between slow-building tension and sudden bursts of chaos, a technique that keeps viewers on edge without resorting to constant jump scares. This measured approach to pacing and visual storytelling amplifies the film's psychological impact, making every kill feel weighed down by emotional consequence rather than cheap shock value. The film's visual language leans into its holiday setting without sacrificing horror grit. The camera work uses tight close-ups to capture the killer's fractured psyche, while wider shots underscore isolation and vulnerability in the snowy, often dimly lit environments. Nelson's direction prioritizes mood over spectacle, ensuring that action scenes feel grounded and impactful. The choreography of violence is methodical, emphasizing the killer's calculated nature rather than frenetic slasher chaos. This approach distinguishes Silent Night, Deadly Night from more frenetic holiday horror flicks, giving it a chilling gravitas that lingers beyond individual scenes. The director's known strength in building dread through atmosphere rather than gore alone is on full display, allowing the film to maintain suspense even in quieter moments. Leading the cast, Rohan Campbell brings a brooding intensity to the role of Billy, the killer Santa. Campbell's previous work often taps into complex emotional states, which suits a character defined by trauma and inner conflict. Opposite him, Ruby Modine provides a compelling counterbalance as the young woman who challenges Billy's deadly mission, offering a blend of vulnerability and resilience. The supporting cast, including David Tomlinson and Eric Athavale, rounds out a solid ensemble that anchors the film's emotional stakes. Their performances help avoid the caricature pitfalls common in slasher films, lending credibility to the interpersonal dynamics amid the horror. Early reactions to the cast's chemistry suggest that their interactions bring depth to what could have been a straightforward revenge thriller, elevating the narrative beyond genre conventions. The ensemble's strength lies in their ability to convey a spectrum of responses to violence and fear, from numbness to defiant hope. This dynamic is crucial, given that the film appears to lean into themes of confronting one's past and the cyclical nature of trauma. The chemistry between Campbell and Modine is especially important, as their characters' relationship drives the emotional core of the story. Supporting players contribute nuanced performances that flesh out the community around the killer, adding layers to the narrative texture. The casting avoids the typical slasher stereotypes, instead favoring actors capable of more grounded, emotionally resonant portrayals. This investment in performance quality helps Silent Night, Deadly Night transcend genre cliches and engage audiences looking for horror with substance. Writing-wise, the screenplay by Kami, Hickey, and Nelson crafts a structure that balances slasher set pieces with a character-driven arc. The story seems to operate on a yearly cycle of violence, which provides both a ritualistic rhythm and an opportunity to explore the protagonist's psychological evolution. Themes of trauma, identity, and redemption appear central, with the young woman's role likely serving as a catalyst for Billy's confrontation with his own darkness. A narrative doesn't shy away from the brutality inherent in its premise, but seeks to contextualize it within a broader emotional landscape. This layered approach to storytelling sets it apart from more exploitative holiday horrors, suggesting a deliberate effort to engage viewers on multiple levels, visceral and intellectual. The script structure probably alternates between tense buildup and explosive moments of violence, using the Christmas setting as both ironic backdrop and thematic counterpoint. The idea of a killer Santa taps into cultural anxieties about corrupted innocence and festivity gone wrong. The film's writing appears to leverage these motifs not just for shock, but to probe the long-term effects of trauma on identity and behavior. While it doesn't reinvent the slasher formula, it refines it with sharper character focus and thematic ambition. This makes for a narrative that's as much about psychological horror as physical threat, inviting viewers to consider what drives a killer beyond the surface-level carnage. As a franchise entry, this 2025 Silent Night, Deadly Night builds upon its predecessor's premise, but updates the tone and focus for contemporary audiences. Unlike earlier versions that leaned heavily into shock and camp, this film opts for a darker, more serious take that aligns with modern horror trends, emphasizing mood and character complexity. When compared to other holiday killers or psychological slashers like Black Christmas, or even the more recent iterations of Halloween, it situates itself in a space that values emotional depth alongside gore. Fans of stylish, tightly directed horror thrillers will find familiar beats here, but the film's emphasis on the protagonist's internal struggle sets it apart from more straightforward slashers that prioritize spectacle over substance. Audience expectations for this film likely include a blend of tense atmosphere, chilling kills, and a layered protagonist whose motivations extend beyond simple revenge or madness. Unlike films that rely on twist-heavy plotting, Silent Night, Deadly Night appears to prioritize mood and character development, with a style that favors slow-burn dread punctuated by brutal violence. This approach will appeal to viewers who appreciate horror that feels psychologically grounded and thematically rich rather than just a string of shocks. Comparisons to genre peers suggest it's less about flashy set pieces and more about the emotional and moral complexity of its killer, which is a notable direction for a franchise historically known for its slasher roots. Who is this film for? Horror fans who want their holiday scares with a side of psychological complexity will find much to appreciate here. Those looking for a fresh take on the killer Santa archetype, one that explores trauma and the human cost of violence, will be rewarded by the film's thoughtful direction and performances. However, viewers expecting a fast-paced, gore-heavy slasher might find its measured pacing and character focus less immediately satisfying. Potential weaknesses could lie in how well the film balances its psychological ambitions with genre expectations, especially if it leans too heavily into introspection at the expense of suspense. Still, the combination of a capable cast, a director known for tension, and a script that aims for emotional depth makes it a solid entry in the modern horror thriller space. Overall, Silent Night, Deadly Night 2025 is a horror thriller that demands attention for its craft and ambition. It's a film that respects the genre's conventions while pushing toward a more nuanced portrayal of its killer's psyche. If you appreciate horror that blends atmosphere, smart performances, and thematic weight with your seasonal scares, this one's worth a look. It may not reinvent the slasher wheel, but it sharpens it, delivering a chilling ride that lingers beyond the closing credits. For viewers fatigued by formulaic horror, this film offers a darker, more introspective holiday nightmare that feels both timely and haunting. As the night answers back, Silent Night, Deadly Night reminds us that even the most familiar myths can hold new darkness beneath their surface. Thanks for watching Cut to Reel. If you want more deep dives into films that blend style with substance, stick around. Until next time, keep your eyes sharp and your screen cut to reel. Thanks for watching Cut to Reel. I'll see you next time for another look beneath the surface of cinema's best.